On the morning of Christmas Eve in 1971, a 17-year-old girl named Juliane Koepcke and her mother, Maria, boarded Lancer Flight 508 in Lima, Peru. They were flying to a place called Pucallpa, where Juliane's father was waiting for them so the whole family could spend Christmas together. But this flight was not a normal one. Even back then, Lancer Airlines had a terrible reputation. It was known as one of the most unsafe airlines in history. Just a year before, another Lancer plane, Flight 502, had crashed because of bad maintenance, killing almost everyone on board. And 4 years before that, a Lancer pilot had made a fatal mistake that sent a plane crashing into a mountain, killing everyone inside. By 1971, more than a third of the type of plane they were flying in had already crashed or been badly damaged in accident. This was not an airline most people felt safe flying with. But Juliane and her mother didn't really have a choice. They were supposed to fly earlier, but Juliane had stayed behind a few extra days to finish high school and attend her graduation. This was now their only available flight, and like most people, they hoped that despite everything, they would land safely. After all, most planes do make it. They had no idea that this decision would change their lives forever. At first, the flight started normally. It was only supposed to take less than an hour. Juliane's mother, who was very afraid of flying, sat nervously in her seat, praying that the plane would land safely. Juliane, however, felt calm. She looked out the window at the endless green Amazon rainforest below, watching the trees stretch out as far as she could see. Somewhere down there was a Panguana, a research station her parents had built. Juliane had grown up there for much as her childhood, learning about animals, plants, and how to survive in the wild. Her mother studied birds and her father studied animals, so Juliane has spent her life surrounded by nature. She didn't know it yet that everything she had learned there would soon save her life. Then, suddenly, the blue black sky disappeared. In seconds, the plane flew straight into a massive violent storm. The entire aircraft began shaking violently, bouncing up and down and tightening from side to side. Overhead compartment flew open and bags, food, and wrapped Christmas gifts fell onto screaming passengers. Lightning flashed outside the windows. Thunder roared so loudly it felt like the sky was exploding. People cried, screamed, and clung to their seats in terror. This went on for almost 10 minutes. Then, in one blinding flash, lightning struck the plane's right wing. The impact was so strong that the plane tore apart in mid-air. Juliane looked ahead and saw something horrifying. The floor in front of her was gone. The plane was falling fast forward the jungle. People were screaming everywhere and the noise was so loud. Beside her, she heard her mother's calm, gentle voice. She said, "It is okay. It is all over now." Then everything went silent. Suddenly, Juliane was no longer inside the plane. She was falling through the sky, still strapped to her seat. The seat spun wildly in circles like a helicopter blade as she dropped toward the forest below. The people who had been sitting next to her, including her mother, were gone. Far beneath her, she saw the bright green tops of the trees rushing closer. They looked like tiny, bumpy pieces of broccoli. Then she blacked out. When Juliane woke up, she was lying in a muddy clearing in the rainforest, still strapped to her seat. Heavy rain poured down and small insects buzzed all around her. At first, she couldn't believe she was actually alive. She was badly injured, her collarbone was broken. Her shoulder and leg were deeply cut. One of her eyes was swollen shut and she felt so much pain on her nails. She had fallen nearly 10,000 feet and somehow survived. It was nothing short of a miracle. But she was completely alone. The third wide Amazon surrounded her in every direction. It was filled with dangerous creatures, venomous snakes, hood spiders, crocodiles like caiman, and clouds of biting insects. Juliane had lost her glasses, so she could barely see. One of her sandals was gone, leaving one foot bare against the rough forest ground. And to top it all off, it was Christmas Day. Even though she was scared and in terrible pain, Juliane remembered what her parents had taught her. One rule stood out above everything else. Always follow water downstream. Small streams lead to bigger rivers, and rivers lead to people. Then Juliane used a stick to carefully tap the ground in front of her, so she wouldn't accidentally step on a snake. Juliane slowly followed a small stream through the jungle. She avoided touching unfamiliar plants, knowing many of them were poisonous. Sometimes she walked directly in the water to stay away from snakes hiding in the leaves. Days passed, she had no food, only river water to drink. Mosquitoes bite her constantly. At night, the temperature dropped and she shivered in her thin dress, unable to start a fire in the non-stop rain. On the fourth day, she heard a terrifying sound, the loud harsh cries of king vultures cycling above. She followed the noise and came across plain seats attached to dead passengers. One of them was a woman. For a moment, Juliane was frozen with fear, thinking it might be her mother. But as she got closer, she saw the woman had painted nails, and her mother never wore nail polish. A huge wave of relief washed over her, but it was quickly mixed with deep sadness and guilt. By the 10th day, Juliane was extremely weak. Her skin was badly sunburned, and her hunger was so intense that it hurt. She felt close to giving up until she saw something unbelievable: a small wooden hut hidden in the trees. She stumbled inside and found some fuel. She used it to clean a wound that had become infected with maggot. It was painful and exhausting work. When she finished, she collapsed on the floor and slept. The next morning, she heard voices. 3 Peruvian fishermen were approaching the hut. When they saw her, they were shocked. At first, they thought she was a legendary water spirit, but Juliane spoke Spanish and explained what had happened. After 11 terrifying days alone in the jungle, she was finally rescued. Later, Juliane learned the devastating truth. She was the only survivor of 92 people on NASA Flight 508. Some passengers had survived the initial fall but died later from their injuries. Her mother was among them. Investigators later said the crash happened because the pilot flew directly into a dangerous storm and because the plane was in poor condition. Not long after, Lancer Airline was shut down. Juliane did not survive by luck alone. She survived because of what her parents had taught her, their lessons and her will to live. The same jungle that nearly killed her was also the place that saved her life. And that's the end of her story.